I'm sitting in my corner office on the 42nd floor of 1 Manhattan West, watching the sun set over the Hudson River. In 30 minutes, I'll walk into my parents' Upper West Side penthouse for what they've called an urgent family dinner. They have no idea that the woman they've dismissed for 32 years controls more wealth than they've ever dreamed of. My name is Daniela Morgan, and if you've ever been underestimated by your own family, the people who should believe in you most stick around. This story will leave you speechless. And don't forget to subscribe, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about family loyalty. The elevator in their building still makes that familiar ding as I reach the 20th floor. The same marble floors, the same expensive art lining the hallways. I can hear them through the door before I even knock. My mother's laugh, bright and musical, followed by my father's deeper chuckle, and underneath it all, Sophia's voice, animated and confident as always. "Danny!" My mother opens the door, her smile just a fraction too wide. Margaret Morgan has perfected the art of looking genuinely pleased while somehow making you feel like an afterthought. "You look tired, sweetheart. Are you eating enough?" Before I can answer, she's already turning away, leading me into the dining room, where my father and sister are deep in conversation. The table is set with their best china. The Wedgwood they only use for special occasions. Apparently, Sophia's latest achievement qualifies. "Daniel's here," my mother announces, using the childhood nickname that makes me feel 12 years old again. My father, Robert Morgan, glances up from his glass of Caymus Cabernet. "Good, we can start. Sophia was just telling us about the gallery in Soho that wants to feature her work." Sophia beams, her perfectly blown-out hair catching the light from the crystal chandelier. At 28, she's everything I've never been. Effortlessly beautiful, naturally charming, and completely confident in her place as the family favorite. "It's not just any gallery, Dad," she says, cutting into her perfectly prepared salmon. "It's the Meridian Gallery. They're talking about a solo exhibition. Can you believe it?" "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother says, reaching over to squeeze Sophia's hand. "We always knew your talent would be recognized." I take a sip of wine and wait for someone to ask about my week. About the merger I just closed. About the client who trusted me with restructuring his entire investment portfolio. But the conversation flows around me like I'm not even here. "The opening reception alone will cost nearly $50,000, Sophia continues. "But Marcus thinks it's worth the investment." Marcus is her fiancé, old money, trust fund, the kind of man who's never worked a day in his life, but somehow always has opinions about business. "Of course it is," my father says. "Art is about vision, not profit margins." The comment stings, though he probably doesn't mean it to. In their minds, I work with numbers. Cold, practical, uninspiring numbers. They think I'm some mid-level accountant at a small firm downtown, pushing papers and balancing books. They've never asked for details, and I've never volunteered them. "What about you, Danny?" my mother asks suddenly, as if just remembering I exist. "How's work?" "Busy," I say simply. "Closed a significant deal this week." "That's nice," she says, but she's already looking back at Sophia. Now, about the catering for the reception. I let their voices wash over me as I cut my salmon into precise pieces. They have no idea that the small firm I work for is actually my own company. That United Capital Management has assets under management worth over $200 million. That the busy week I mentioned involved advising a tech startup on their Series C funding, a deal worth $45 million. They don't know because they've never asked. Not really. "The thing about Danny," my father is saying to Sophia, and I realize I've missed part of the conversation, is that she's always been practical. You're the dreamer in the family. Dad's right, Sophia says, giving me what she probably thinks is an encouraging smile. You've always been so good with, practical things, money and spreadsheets and all that. The way she says it makes it sound like a consolation prize. Like being good with money is something you settle for when you can't create art, or inspire people, or light up a room just by walking into it. It's important work, my mother adds, in the tone people use when they're trying to make someone feel better about their mediocre life choices. Someone has to keep track of all those numbers. I nod and smile, the same way I've been nodding and smiling at family dinners for the past 15 years. Ever since I graduated from Wharton, and they assumed I'd gotten lucky to find any job at all. Ever since Sophia's first gallery showing, when they flew to Paris to support her, but couldn't make time for my Harvard Business School graduation. The irony is almost beautiful. While they've been dismissing my little accounting job, I've been quietly building an empire. While they've been funding Sophia's artistic pursuits with their trust fund money, I've been generating returns that would make their investment advisor weep with joy. And the most beautiful irony of all? Some of those returns have been flowing right back to them, through investments and loans they don't even know exist. More wine, Danny? My father asks, already reaching for the bottle. I'm fine, thank you. You sure? You look stressed. Maybe you should take a vacation. Get away from all those spreadsheets for a while. If he only knew that my last vacation was a week in Napa Valley, staying at Auberge du Soleil, meeting with venture capital partners about a new fund launch. Or that the Patek Philippe watch on my wrist cost more than most people's cars. I'll think about it, I say. The dinner continues with more praise for Sophia, more gentle dismissal of my existence, more wine to help numb the familiar ache of being invisible in my own family. By the time dessert arrives, creme brulee from their favorite bakery in the village, I've made a decision. As we're clearing the table, my mother pulls me aside in the kitchen. I'm worried about you, sweetheart, she says quietly. You seem distant lately. Are you happy? The question catches me off guard. When was the last time someone in this family asked if I was happy? I'm fine, Mom. It's just, well, Sophia's life is really taking off, you know? The gallery, the engagement, all these opportunities. I don't want you to feel left behind. Left behind, as if life is a race and Sophia is winning while I stumble along behind her, grateful for whatever scraps of attention fall my way. I'm not left behind, I say carefully. Of course not. But maybe it's time to think about what you really want. Maybe find someone special, like Sophia has with Marcus. Or think about a career change, something more fulfilling. Something more fulfilling than managing $200 million in assets. Something more meaningful than the private equity deals that keep me working until midnight most nights. Something more valuable than the investment strategies that have made me independently wealthy by 32. I'll think about it, I say again. As I'm leaving, Sophia hugs me goodbye. We should get lunch soon, she says. I want to hear all about your life. I feel like we never really talk anymore. She means it, I think. In her own way, she cares. But she's never had to fight for attention, never had to prove herself, never had to sit quietly while everyone else gets praised for their achievements. Walking back to my car, a Tesla Model S that they assume I lease because it's practical for city driving, I think about all the things they don't know. The penthouse apartment on Central Park West that they think belongs to my roommate. The investment portfolio that generates more in passive income each month than they spend in a year. The power I could wield with a single phone call. But let me take you back to where this all started. To the moment I realized that being underestimated might just be the greatest advantage I could ever have. Because tonight's dinner wasn't just about Sophia's gallery show. It was about understanding exactly how much my family thinks I'm worth. And tomorrow, I'm going to show them how wrong they've been. The memories hit me as I drive through Central Park. The same route I've taken 1,000 times from my parents' apartment to my own. But tonight, every familiar landmark triggers another flashback to growing up as the family disappointment. I was 15 when I got my first job, hostess at a restaurant in Brooklyn Heights, earning $8 an hour plus tips, while other kids my age were at summer camps or beach houses in the Hamptons. I was learning how to smile through difficult customers and balance cash registers. My parents called it character building. Sophia was 11 then, already enrolled in private art classes at the Brooklyn Museum Art School. $1,200 a month, not including supplies. When I asked if I could take a photography workshop that summer, just $200. My mother sighed and said, "Danny, we can't fund every hobby. Besides, you're learning valuable skills at work." Valuable skills. I remember the way she said it, like my desire to explore creativity was somehow less valid than my sister's obvious talent. If you've ever felt like the responsible one while your sibling got to be the dreamer, you'll understand what happened next. Because what my parents saw as Sophia's natural gift was actually something much more expensive, and they were happy to pay for it. By the time I was 17, Sophia was accepted into LaGuardia High School for the Arts. The commute from our apartment required a Metro card, lunches out, and new art supplies every semester. Meanwhile, I was working 20 hours a week at a Barnes & Noble in Park Slope, saving every penny for college applications. "You're so responsible, Danny," my father would say, watching me count tips at the kitchen table. "Sophia could learn from your work ethic." But when it came time for college visits, they flew with Sophia to tour art schools in California and Chicago. When I needed to visit campuses for business programs, I took the Greyhound bus and stayed in hostels. The pattern was always the same. Sophia needed support, emotional, financial, logistical. I needed to figure things out on my own. I pull into the underground garage of my building on Central Park West, a limestone pre-war with doormen who've known me for 3 years. They still think I'm Miss Morgan's roommate, because that's the story I've let my family believe. It's easier than explaining how a girl with a simple finance job can afford $6,000 a month in rent. Taking the elevator to the 19th floor, I let myself into my apartment, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, with views of the park that real estate agents describe as breathtaking. The living room is decorated simply but expensively. A Restoration Hardware sectional in charcoal linen, a walnut dining table from West Elm, artwork from emerging artists I've discovered through my own connections. My parents have never been here. They assume I live in some cramped studio in Queens, splitting expenses with a roommate from college. I pour myself a glass of Sancerre and settle into my favorite chair, the one positioned perfectly to watch the lights twinkle across Central Park. Tonight's dinner was typical, but something about it felt different. Maybe it's because I'm tired of pretending, or maybe it's because I've finally built enough wealth and power to stop caring what they think. The turning point came during my senior year at Columbia. I was double majoring in economics and mathematics, working 30 hours a week at an investment firm in Midtown, and somehow managing a 3.8 GPA. Sophia was a junior at Parsons, struggling with her painting classes and spending her weekends at gallery openings in Chelsea. One Sunday dinner, my parents announced they were establishing a trust fund. $50,000 for each daughter, they said, to help us get started after graduation. "But Sophia's portion will be available immediately," my mother explained. "She needs studio space and supplies to build her portfolio. Danny's will be held until she's 25, since she's so good with money anyway." I remember staring at them across that same dining table, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not anger, something colder and more calculating. "That seems fair," I said quietly. What I didn't tell them was that I'd already made my first real investment. $10,000 in a biotech startup that my boss at the firm had mentioned. 6 months later, that investment was worth $47,000. By the time I graduated, it had grown to $86,000. While Sophia spent her trust fund on a studio in Bushwick and expensive art supplies, I was learning to read SEC filings and analyze market trends. While she networked at gallery parties, I was building relationships with venture capital partners and private equity managers. The irony is that my parents' favoritism actually taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. The only person you can truly count on is yourself. By 25, when my trust fund finally became available, I didn't need it. I'd already built my first $100,000 through careful investments and side consulting work. I took the $50,000 and invested it in a distressed real estate deal in Long Island City. 18 months later, I sold my stake for a $130,000 profit. My parents never asked about any of it. They were too busy celebrating Sophia's first group exhibition in a gallery in the East Village. "We're so proud," my mother gushed over dinner that night. 3 of her pieces sold on opening night. What she didn't mention was that I'd bought 2 of them, anonymously, through a collector friend. $800 each, a tiny fraction of what I was earning, but enough to make Sophia feel successful and my parents feel validated in their investment. That became my pattern. Quiet support from the shadows, watching my family build their narrative about the talented daughter and the practical one, never knowing that the practical one was orchestrating more than they could imagine. When Sophia needed $15,000 for a residency program in Italy, my parents stressed about the expense for weeks. The money appeared through a scholarship I arranged through my network of contacts in the art world. When my father's restaurant, his midlife crisis investment, started failing 3 years ago, he spent months worried about losing their savings. A private investor group stepped in with bridge financing, buying him time to sell without losing everything. The managing partner of that group reported directly to me. Every time they dismissed my career as just accounting, I was actually building the financial foundation that kept their comfortable lifestyle intact. Every time they praised Sophia's artistic vision, I was ensuring she had the resources to pursue it. And through it all, I learned something my Harvard professors never taught. Sometimes, the greatest power comes from being underestimated. Standing at my window now, looking out over the park where I used to walk as a child, I think about tomorrow night's family gathering, Sophia's engagement party at the Plaza Hotel. 200 guests, a sit-down dinner, an open bar featuring top-shelf liquor. My parents have been planning it for months, stressed about the cost, but determined to give Sophia the celebration she deserves. What they don't know is that I've been planning too. Because tomorrow night, the family dynamic is going to change forever. And for the first time in 32 years, I won't be standing in anyone's shadow. The question isn't whether they'll finally see me clearly. It's whether they'll be able to handle what they see. The Plaza Hotel's grand ballroom gleams under crystal chandeliers that have witnessed a century of New York's most important celebrations. Tonight, it's hosting Sophia's engagement party, and every detail screams expensive elegance. From the white orchid centerpieces to the champagne fountain that cost more per hour than most people earn in a week. I arrive precisely on time, wearing a navy Diane von Furstenberg dress that strikes the perfect balance between appropriate and understated. My parents insisted on a receiving line, so I wait my turn behind a parade of family friends, art world connections, and Marcus's relatives, old money families with names that appear on museum donor walls throughout Manhattan. "Danny!" Sophia throws her arms around me, her engagement ring catching the light. It's a flawless 3-carat emerald-cut diamond that probably cost Marcus more than I pretended to earn in a year. You look beautiful. I'm so glad you're here. She means it, which somehow makes everything harder. Sophia has never been cruel to me, never actively participated in my parents' dismissive attitude. She simply lived her entire life as the center of everyone's attention, assuming that's the natural order of things. Congratulations, I tell her, and I genuinely mean it. My anger has never been directed at my sister. It's reserved for the parents who created this dynamic in the first place. My mother appears beside us, resplendent in a beaded Oscar de la Renta gown that cost more than most people's rent. Doesn't she look radiant? She asks, beaming at Sophia. We're so happy. I'm guided to table 12, tucked away near the kitchen doors, while family occupies the prime real estate near the head table. My dinner companions include a few distant cousins and some of Marcus's co-workers from his family's investment firm, people who know me only as Sophia's sister, the one who works in accounting. The woman next to me, a blonde in her 40s with perfectly veneered teeth, makes polite conversation while we wait for the first course. So, you're in finance too? She asks after learning I work downtown. Something like that, I reply, sipping my champagne. Dom Perignon, 2012. Retail price around $300 per bottle. How nice that you can appreciate numbers, she continues. I could never do it. All those spreadsheets and calculations. So detail-oriented. Before I can respond, the music dims and my father approaches the microphone. Robert Morgan has always been comfortable with public speaking, a skill that served him well during his years as a marketing executive before he semi-retired to pursue his restaurant venture. Ladies and gentlemen, he begins, his voice carrying easily across the ballroom. Margaret and I want to thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate our daughter Sophia and her fiancé Marcus. Applause ripples through the room. I watch Sophia glow under the attention, Marcus beaming beside her like he's won the lottery. Which, in a way, he has. Not because of money, but because he's marrying into a family that knows how to celebrate love. When Sophia was little, my father continues, she used to paint murals on her bedroom walls. Most parents would have been horrified, but we knew we were seeing something special. We were witnessing the early signs of an artist who would one day share her gift with the world. More applause. I take another sip of champagne and try to remember the last time either of my parents told a charming story about my childhood. Sophia represents everything that's bright and creative and inspiring about the Morgan family legacy, he says, raising his glass. She reminds us that some people are born to create beauty, to touch hearts, to make the world more meaningful through their vision. The toast continues for another few minutes, full of praise for Sophia's talent, her kindness, her bright future with Marcus. There's a brief mention of family values and the importance of supporting each other's dreams. I notice he doesn't mention me at all. When the applause dies down, my mother takes the microphone. Margaret Morgan has always been more emotional than my father, more likely to cry at weddings and graduation ceremonies. Tonight is no exception. I remember when Sophia first told us about Marcus, she begins, her voice thick with feeling. She was so happy, so excited, and I thought, this is what every mother dreams of. Seeing her daughter find someone who appreciates her gifts, who supports her art, who understands that she's destined for something extraordinary. I watch the faces around my table, all nodding and smiling at this touching maternal sentiment. The blonde beside me dabs at her eyes with her napkin. Sophia has always been our shining star, my mother continues. Even as a little girl, she had this light about her, this creativity that just bubbled up naturally. We knew she was special. What about me? The question forms unbidden in my mind. Was I not special? Did I not have any light worth mentioning? And Marcus, she says, turning toward the head table. Thank you for seeing what we've always seen in our daughter. Thank you for supporting her dreams and believing in her talent. Welcome to our family. The applause is thunderous. People are standing, champagne glasses raised, faces glowing with the warmth of witnessing true parental pride. And I'm sitting at table 12, realizing that my own mother just gave a 5-minute speech about family legacy without acknowledging that half of her children exist. During the salad course, conversations flow around me. People discuss Sophia's upcoming gallery exhibition, Marcus's promotion at his family firm, wedding plans for next spring in Martha's Vineyard. Someone mentioned seeing my parents at a charity auction last month, bidding on a painting for Sophia's collection. They're such devoted parents, the blonde beside me observes. You can tell family means everything to them. I nod and smile, the expression I've perfected over 3 decades of being the invisible daughter. As the evening progresses, the oversight becomes more glaring. During the dancing, my father twirls Sophia around the floor while guests watch adoringly. During the cake cutting, he makes another impromptu toast about our brilliant daughter who carries the Morgan name with such grace. I find myself studying the room with new eyes, calculating the cost of everything I see. The venue rental, probably $15,000 for the evening. The catering, at least $200 per person for this level of service. The flowers, the photography, the live jazz quartet, easily another $10,000 combined. Somewhere north of $60,000 for one evening, all to celebrate the daughter they've always believed in. When was the last time they spent $60 celebrating me? The thought that follows is dangerous, electric with possibility. They have no idea who they're really dealing with. No idea that the quiet daughter at table 12 could solve all their financial problems with a single phone call, or create them just as easily. As the evening winds down, I approach my parents near the coat check. They're glowing with the success of the evening, accepting congratulations from departing guests. Beautiful party, I tell them honestly. Thank you, sweetheart, my mother says, giving me a distracted hug. I hope you had a good time. I'm sorry we didn't get to talk more. It's just been so busy. Of course, it's Sophia's night. Exactly, my father agrees. Though I hope you got some networking done. You never know who might be looking for someone with your practical skills. Practical skills. Even here, even now, I'm being reduced to spreadsheets and calculators. As I wait for the valet to bring my car, I watch my parents through the glass doors of the lobby. They're still talking with guests, still basking in the glow of having successfully launched their beloved daughter toward her bright future. What they don't know is that their beloved daughter's bright future, the gallery exhibition, the wedding venue deposit, even tonight's engagement party, has been subsidized by the practical daughter they just spent the evening ignoring. But more importantly, what they don't know is that the practical daughter has finally run out of patience. Driving home through the mostly empty streets of Manhattan, I make a decision that will change everything. Tomorrow, I'm going to start showing them exactly what practical skills can accomplish. And I'm going to let them decide whether being underestimated was the biggest mistake of their lives. The irony hits me as I unlock my apartment door at midnight. My parents spent the evening celebrating Sophia's bright future, while standing in a ballroom paid for with money that flowed, ultimately, from my investments. I pour myself a glass of wine and settle into my home office, a space my family has never seen. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlook Central Park West. My desk is a custom piece from CB2, clean lines in walnut and steel. Behind it, a wall of monitors displays real-time market data from Tokyo, London, and New York. This is where I've built my empire, quietly and methodically. while my family assumed I was struggling through entry-level accounting work. Let me tell you how it really started. During my junior year at Columbia, I landed an internship at Meridian Partners, a mid-sized investment firm in Midtown. Most interns fetched coffee and made copies. I spent my lunch hours in the research department, reading analyst reports and studying market trends. The senior partners noticed. By my senior year, they offered me a position as a junior analyst, $45,000 to start, which seemed like a fortune compared to my restaurant hostess wages. But I had bigger plans. The 2008 financial crisis hit during my first year of work. While everyone else panicked, I saw opportunity. Distressed assets were selling for pennies on the dollar. Real estate investments that had been worth millions were suddenly available for thousands. I had saved $32,000 from my college jobs and internship salary. Instead of playing it safe, I invested everything in a portfolio of distressed commercial properties in Queens and Brooklyn. The senior partners at Meridian thought I was insane. "Daniela," my boss warned me, "you're risking your entire savings on a market that's in free fall." He was right about the risk. What he didn't understand was that I'd spent months analyzing the fundamentals. These weren't random gambles. They were calculated investments in neighborhoods I knew would recover. 18 months later, my $32,000 had grown to $147,000. That's when I made my first real power move. I approached the managing partners at Meridian with a proposal. Let me start a specialized fund focused on distressed real estate and small business acquisitions. I would provide the initial capital and expertise. They would provide the infrastructure and regulatory oversight. United Capital Management was born with me as the sole managing partner. My parents never asked about the details of my promotion. They assumed I'd gotten lucky, maybe earned a small raise or a fancy new title. When I moved from my studio apartment in Queens to a one-bedroom in the Upper West Side, they figured I'd found a roommate to split costs. They certainly never suspected that their practical daughter was generating seven-figure returns. The fund grew quickly. Word spread through Manhattan's financial community about the young analyst who could spot undervalued assets before anyone else. High-net-worth clients started asking specifically to work with me. By age 26, I was managing $50 million in assets. By 28, it was $120 million. Today, at 32, United Capital Management oversees $237 million across various investment vehicles. But the numbers only tell part of the story. The real power came from understanding how money moves through families like mine, how parents like mine make financial decisions, how easy it is to influence those decisions when you control the right resources. Take my father's restaurant, for example. 3 years ago, Robert Morgan decided he wanted to own a farm-to-table restaurant in Park Slope. He'd read articles about the booming Brooklyn food scene and convinced himself he understood the hospitality business because he'd eaten in a lot of restaurants. The initial investment was $200,000, most of their liquid savings. Within 18 months, the restaurant was bleeding money. Bad location, inexperienced management, overhead costs that spiraled out of control. My parents lost sleep for months, worried about losing everything they'd saved for retirement. That's when I made my move. I created a shell company called Brooklyn Hospitality Partners. Through a network of contacts in the restaurant industry, I arranged for BHP to purchase the failing restaurant, assume all debts, and hire my father as a consulting manager at a generous salary. The transaction saved my parents from bankruptcy and allowed my father to save face. He told everyone he'd sold the business to a larger hospitality group and was staying on to share his expertise. What he didn't know was that his daughter owned Brooklyn Hospitality Partners. What he still doesn't know is that the restaurant has been profitable for the past 2 years, generating enough income to cover its own expenses, plus a healthy return on my investment. Similar patterns emerged elsewhere. When Sophia needed funding for her upcoming gallery exhibition, I arranged for an anonymous patron to sponsor the event through one of my art world contacts. $15,000 that my parents think came from a mysterious benefactor who believes in supporting emerging artists. When my parents' co-op building needed major renovations last year, assessments that would have cost them $45,000, I worked through my real estate network to arrange favorable financing that reduced their burden to $12,000. Every time they faced a financial stress over the past 5 years, I've been the invisible hand that smoothed their path. And every time they've dismissed my career as simple accounting work, I've been managing investments that dwarf their entire net worth. But tonight's engagement party was different. Tonight, I realized I'm tired of being invisible. I pull up my laptop and review the portfolio of investments connected to my family. It's more extensive than they could imagine. Their apartment building? I own a 12% stake through a real estate investment trust I established 4 years ago. Sophia's art studio in Bushwick? The building is owned by a property management company that reports to one of my subsidiary funds. Even Marcus's family firm handles some of their investments through funds that ultimately connect back to my financial network. I've been playing the long game without even realizing it, creating a web of financial influence that touches every aspect of their lives. The question now is, what to do with that influence? I could continue as I have been, quietly supporting from the shadows, letting them believe in their own narrative about the talented daughter and the practical one. Or I could show them the truth. I open a secure file on my laptop and begin drafting a document. It's something I never thought I'd need to create. A comprehensive overview of my actual financial position, complete with documentation and proof. Assets under management, 237. 4 million personal net worth, 18. $7 million real estate holdings. 7 properties across Manhattan and Brooklyn, including my Central Park West apartment and a weekend house in the Hamptons that I bought under an LLC name. Investment portfolio, diversified holdings in everything from tech startups to municipal bonds, generating monthly passive income of approximately $43,000. As I compile the information, I realize something that makes me laugh out loud in my empty apartment. My monthly passive income is higher than what my parents think I earn in an entire year. But the most beautiful irony of all is this. While they've spent 32 years treating me like the family disappointment, I've actually become the most successful member of the Morgan family by every traditional measure. More successful than my father ever was in his marketing career. More financially secure than they are, even with their trust fund inheritance. And certainly more capable of supporting Sophia's artistic dreams than they've ever been. The document is finished by 2 a.m. 23 pages of financial statements, investment summaries, and legal documentation that proves everything I've just written. Tomorrow night, there's another family dinner. Sophia wants to show everyone the engagement photos and discuss wedding plans. I think it's time my family learned who's really been taking care of them all these years. And more importantly, I think it's time they learned what happens when you take someone's loyalty for granted for too long. Because the practical daughter they've been dismissing, she's about to become the most important person in their lives. Sunday evening arrives with the kind of crisp October air that makes Manhattan feel electric with possibility. I've spent the weekend finalizing my presentation, organizing documents, and preparing for what will either be the most liberating conversation of my life or the most destructive. Probably both. I arrive at my parents' apartment carrying a leather portfolio that looks innocuous enough, the kind of folder someone in accounting might use for client presentations. Inside are 23 pages that will rewrite everything my family thinks they know about themselves. The dining room setup is identical to every family dinner we've had for the past decade. Same Wedgwood china, same crystal glasses, same seating arrangement with me relegated to the far end of the table while Sophia sits at my father's right hand. "You look nice tonight, Danny," my mother says, though her attention is already shifting to the engagement photos spread across the coffee table. Sophia got the proofs back from the plaza. They're absolutely stunning. "The photos are beautiful, I'll give them that." Sophia glows in her champagne-colored gown. Marcus looks handsome in his custom tuxedo. And my parents beam with obvious pride in every shot. There are at least 50 photos of the happy couple, surrounded by family and friends in the opulent ballroom. I'm in exactly 3 photos, barely visible in the background. "The wedding photographer wants to use some of these in his portfolio," Sophia says, flipping through the prints. "He said the lighting was perfect, and we look so natural together." "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my father says. "You both look radiant." Dinner proceeds with the usual pattern. Conversation revolves around Sophia's wedding plans. Venues they're considering in Martha's Vineyard, dress shopping appointments at Kleinfeld, discussions about the guest list that's already approaching 300 people. I let them talk, occasionally nodding or offering appropriate comments while I gather my courage for what comes next. "The catering alone is going to be expensive," my mother says, a slight worry line creasing her forehead. "But it's a once-in-a-lifetime event. We want everything to be perfect." "How much are we talking about?" I ask casually. "Well," my father clears his throat. "With everything, venue, catering, flowers, photography, we're looking at somewhere around 150,000. Maybe a bit more." I do quick mental math. That's about 3.5 months of my passive income. "It's a lot," my mother admits. "But we've been saving, and it's for Sophia. She deserves the wedding of her dreams." "Of course she does. The talented daughter always deserves the best." "What about you, Danny?" Sophia asks suddenly. "Any thoughts about settling down? Maybe finding someone who appreciates your practical nature?" The comment stings, though I don't think she means it to. In Sophia's world, being practical is a consolation prize, something you settle for when you can't be brilliant or beautiful or naturally gifted. "I'm focused on work right now," I say carefully. "Still at that same firm downtown?" my father asks. "Maybe it's time to think about moving up, finding something with more responsibility." More responsibility, if he only knew. "Actually," I say, setting down my wine glass, "there's something I'd like to discuss with all of you. About work and money, and some things you might find interesting." Something in my tone must catch their attention because the conversation pauses. 3 pairs of eyes focus on me with more intensity than I've commanded at a family dinner in years. "What kind of things?" my mother asks. I reach for my portfolio and place it on the table. Things about who I really am, what I really do, and what that means for this family. "Danny," my father says with the patient tone he uses when he thinks I'm being dramatic. "What are you talking about?" I open the portfolio and pull out the first document, a summary sheet I prepared specifically for this moment. Clean, professional, impossible to misunderstand. "I'm talking about the fact that you've been operating under some incorrect assumptions about my life for the past several years." I slide the paper across the table. My father picks it up, adjusts his reading glasses, and begins to scan the contents. The color drains from his face. "What is this?" he asks quietly. "It's a financial summary," I say calmly. "My financial summary." My mother leans over to read the document. I watch her eyes widen as she processes the numbers. "Daniela," she says slowly, "this says you manage over $200 million. $237.4 million as of last Friday's close." Silence. Sophia looks confused, glancing between our parents and me. What are you talking about? Danny works in accounting. No, I say, pulling out the next set of documents. I own an investment management company, United Capital Management. I've been the sole managing partner for 6 years. I distribute copies of my company registration, SEC filings, and client testimonials. Official documents with letterheads and signatures and numbers that are impossible to dismiss. This isn't possible, my father says, but his voice lacks conviction. It's not only possible, it's been generating substantial returns for years. I pull out another document. This is my personal net worth statement, verified by my accountants at Deloitte and Touche. $18.7 million in assets. The silence stretches longer this time. I can hear the ticking of their antique clock from the living room, the distant sound of traffic on Central Park West. Why didn't you tell us? My mother finally asks. Because you never asked, I say simply. In 10 years of family dinners, no one has ever asked me about my clients, my investment strategies, my business goals, or my income. You assumed I was struggling through some entry-level position, and I let you believe it. But the apartment, Sophia says weakly. You said you had a roommate. I pull out a property deed. I own my apartment, 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 19th floor with park views. I bought it 3 years ago for $2.8 million. Cash. More documents follow in a steady parade of revelation. Property holdings, investment portfolios, business partnerships, client contracts. Each piece of paper reframes everything they think they know about me. The restaurant, my father says suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. When I was in trouble with the restaurant, Brooklyn Hospitality Partners, that was me, I confirm. I created BHP to purchase your failing business and keep you employed as a consulting manager. You've been working for me for 2 years. He stares at me like I've grown a second head. The gallery exhibition, Sophia says, understanding beginning to dawn. The anonymous patron who sponsored my show. Also me, arranged through contacts in the art world. $15,000 to give you the platform you deserved. The building assessments, my mother whispers. The favorable financing came through one of my real estate investment networks. Saved you about $30,000 in fees. I let them absorb this information before continuing. For the past 5 years, every time this family has faced a financial challenge, I've been the one solving it. Quietly, anonymously, without taking credit or expecting gratitude. Why? Sophia asks, and for the first time in my life, she sounds small and uncertain. Because I love you, I say honestly. Because you're my family, and I wanted you to succeed. Because despite everything, I wanted you to be happy. Despite everything? My father repeats. Despite the fact that you've spent 32 years treating me like I'm invisible? Despite the fact that you've praised Sophia's every accomplishment while dismissing mine as practical skills? Despite the fact that you've never once asked if I'm happy, if I'm fulfilled, if I have dreams worth supporting? The words come out calmly, without anger or accusation. Just facts, laid out as clearly as the financial documents spread across their dining table. Danny, my mother begins, but I hold up my hand. I'm not finished. I pull out the final document, the one that changes everything. This is a summary of all the financial assistance I've provided to this family over the past 5 years. Restaurant bailout, gallery sponsorship, building assessments, and several smaller interventions you're not even aware of. I slide the paper across the table. The total comes to just over $400,000. My father picks up the document with shaking hands. Now, I continue, my voice still calm and professional. I want you to understand something important. All of that assistance was provided as loans, not gifts. Properly documented loans with interest rates and repayment terms. Loans? My mother asks faintly. I have extensive documentation showing the transfer of funds, the business purposes for each loan, and the agreed-upon repayment schedules, which, according to my records, are now in default. The silence that follows is deafening. What does that mean? Sophia asks. It means, I say, pulling out one final set of documents, that I have legal grounds to call in these loans immediately. With accrued interest, the total amount due is approximately $467,000. I place the loan documents on the table, each one properly notarized and legally binding. The restaurant you thought you sold? I can reclaim it. The apartment building you live in? I can exercise my ownership stake to influence your living situation? The gallery exhibition that launched Sophia's career? The space is owned by a property management company in my investment network. I let that information settle before delivering the final blow. Your comfortable lifestyle, your financial security, your daughter's artistic career, all of it has been subsidized by the family disappointment you've been dismissing for the past decade. My father's hands are trembling as he flips through the loan documents. My mother has gone completely pale. Sophia looks like she might be sick. What do you want? My father asks finally. I want you to understand who you've been talking to, I say quietly. I want you to realize that the daughter you've been treating as an afterthought is actually the most successful person in this room. And I want you to decide whether you're ready to treat me with the respect I've earned. Are you going to destroy us? My mother asks, tears beginning to form in her eyes. That's entirely up to you, I say, gathering my documents and returning them to the portfolio. I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in recognition. I'm interested in being seen for who I really am instead of who you assumed I was. I stand up, smoothing my dress and adjusting my portfolio. Take some time to think about this. We can discuss repayment terms when you're ready. Or we can discuss a different kind of relationship. One where your other daughter gets a seat at the table. I walk toward the door, then pause and look back at my family. They're still sitting in stunned silence, surrounded by the evidence of their own misconceptions. By the way, I add, dinner was lovely. And Sophia? Your engagement photos really are beautiful. I'm happy for you. The door closes behind me with a soft click, leaving me alone in the hallway with the weight of 32 years of invisible resentment finally lifted from my shoulders. Tomorrow, everything changes. Tonight, for the first time in my life, I feel truly free. My phone starts ringing at 6:47 a.m. I'm in my home gym, 40 minutes into my morning routine on the Peloton, when my mother's name flashes across the screen. I let it go to voicemail and continue pedaling. The second call comes at 7:15 a.m., just as I'm stepping out of the shower. My father this time also declined. By 8:30 a.m., when I'm settling into my office at United Capital Management with my first cup of coffee, there have been 6 missed calls and 4 text messages. The texts tell their own story. Mom, 7:52 a.m. Honey, we need to talk. Can you please call us back? Dad, 8:10 a.m. Daniela, we're all a bit shocked. Let's discuss this calmly. Sophia, 8:23 a.m. Danny, I don't understand what happened last night. Please call me. Mom, 8:31 a.m. We love you. We've always loved you. Please don't do anything rash. I set my phone aside and review my morning market analysis. European markets are up, Asian markets closed mixed, and there are some interesting opportunities developing in the biotech sector that deserve attention. My assistant, Jennifer, brings me the quarterly client reports I requested. Your 9 a.m. is here, she says. The Weatherby Foundation wants to discuss their endowment strategy. Perfect. Send them in. I spend the morning doing what I do best, managing other people's wealth with the precision and expertise my family never bothered to recognize. The Weatherby Foundation meeting goes well. They're increasing their allocation to our fund by $12 million. At lunch, I review acquisition opportunities for a distressed retail chain that could be restructured profitably. The numbers are compelling, the timeline aggressive, and the potential returns substantial. It's exactly the kind of complex financial strategy that my parents would describe as spreadsheet work. My phone buzzes with another text from Sophia. Please just tell me you're not going to take everything away. I'm scared. For the first time since last night, I feel a pang of something that might be guilt. Sophia has never been cruel to me. She's been oblivious, certainly, and privileged in ways she doesn't fully understand, but never intentionally hurtful. I text back. We'll talk. Soon. You don't need to be scared. The response comes immediately. Can we meet for coffee? Just us? Tomorrow at 2 p.m. Think coffee on Mercer Street. By 5 p.m., when I'm preparing to leave the office, there have been 14 missed calls from my parents. I finally listened to one of the voicemails. Daniela, it's Mom. Her voice is tight with stress. I know you're upset, and I understand why. We've handled things poorly, and we owe you an apology. But please, sweetheart, let's talk about this. Don't make any hasty decisions that you might regret. We're family. We can work through this together. The next voicemail is from my father, and his tone is more businesslike. Danny, it's Dad. I've been reviewing the documents you left. Some of them are concerning from a legal standpoint. I think we should involve our attorneys to make sure everyone's interests are protected. Please call me back so we can schedule a proper meeting. Attorneys? Of course. The third voicemail surprises me. It's from my Uncle Richard, my father's brother, who I haven't spoken to in 6 months. Daniela, it's Uncle Rick. Your parents called me this morning. They're pretty shaken up about some kind of business dispute you're having. Look, I don't know all the details, but maybe I can help mediate. Give me a call when you get a chance. Word is spreading through the family network. The story is probably already being whispered about at dinner tables across the Upper West Side. Did you hear about Robert and Margaret's daughter? Apparently, she's been lying about her job for years. Now she's threatening to sue them. The narrative is predictable. I'm the ungrateful daughter causing drama. They're the victims of my deception and vindictiveness. I drive home through Central Park, taking the long way to clear my head. The autumn leaves are at peak color, gold and crimson against the darkening sky. It's the kind of evening that makes Manhattan feel magical instead of overwhelming. In my apartment, I pour a glass of wine and settle into my favorite chair overlooking the park. My phone rings again, Sophia this time. I answer. Danny? Her voice is small and uncertain. Thank you for picking up. Hi, Sophia. I've been crying all day, she admits. I don't understand what happened last night. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. But I am, aren't I? I've been so focused on my own life that I never paid attention to yours. I never asked the right questions. I just assumed. You assumed what everyone else assumed. But I'm your sister. I should have known better. There's a long pause. In the background, I can hear classical music, probably one of the Chopin nocturnes she likes to play when she's anxious. Are you really going to take everything away? She asks, finally. I haven't decided. What would make you decide not to? It's a fair question, and I don't have a simple answer. I want things to be different, I say eventually. I want to be treated like an equal member of this family, instead of like a charity case who should be grateful for any attention. You're right, she says quietly. We've been awful to you. Not awful, just oblivious. Same thing, isn't it? Maybe it is. Sophia? I say. I need you to understand something. I don't want to hurt you. I never wanted to hurt any of you. But I also can't keep pretending that the way I've been treated is acceptable. I know. I get it now. And I'm sorry. Don't apologize to me. I'm not the one who needs apologies. Then who does? The version of me who spent 15 years working my ass off while everyone praised your natural talent? The version of me who paid for college with restaurant tips while you got art school funded without question? The version of me who built a successful business from nothing while everyone assumed I was lucky to have any job at all? My voice is getting harder, more emotional than I intended. That version of me deserves recognition. She deserves respect. She deserves to be seen for what she actually accomplished instead of what everyone assumed she was capable of. You're right, Sophia says again. You're absolutely right. We talk for another 20 minutes. She tells me about the conversations she's had with our parents since last night, how they're scrambling to understand what went wrong, how they're afraid of losing me entirely. They love you, she says. They're just bad at showing it. Love isn't enough, I tell her. Not by itself. After we hang up, I sit in the growing darkness of my apartment and think about what I really want. Do I want them to suffer? To lose their comfortable lifestyle and social standing? Or do I want something more complicated? Acknowledgement, respect, a place at the table that matches my actual contributions to this family? My phone buzzes with a text from my mother. Your father and I would like to take you to dinner tomorrow night. Somewhere nice. Just the three of us. Please say yes. I stare at the message for a long time before responding. Le Bernardin. 8 p.m. And Mom? Come prepared to listen. Of course, sweetheart. We'll listen to whatever you want to say. As I get ready for bed, I realize that tomorrow night will determine whether the Morgan family has any future worth preserving, or whether some relationships are too damaged by years of neglect to ever truly heal. Either way, the begging has begun. And for the first time in my life, I'm the one with the power to say yes or no. 2 years later, I'm sitting in the same chair in my Central Park West apartment, but everything else has changed. The morning sun streams through windows that no longer feel like a secret hideaway. My family knows where I live now. They've seen the artwork I've collected, the view I wake up to every day, the life I built while they weren't paying attention. My phone rings, and Sophia's name appears on the screen. But this time, I answer with a smile. Good morning, successful sister, she says, and I can hear the grin in her voice. Good morning, talented sister, I reply, using the old family dynamic as a joke instead of a wound. Are we still on for lunch today? Absolutely. 1 o'clock at that place in Soho you wanted to try. Perfect. And Danny, thank you again for what you did yesterday. The Times review was incredible. Yesterday, Sophia had her first major solo exhibition opening at the Whitney Museum. The New York Times critic called her work luminous and deeply personal, and praised her unique ability to capture emotional complexity in abstract forms. What the critic didn't know was that I'd introduced Sophia to the curator 2 years ago, after our family reckoning forced everyone to rebuild their relationships from the ground up. The night at Le Bernardin changed everything. I arrived to find my parents already seated, looking smaller and more uncertain than I'd ever seen them. My mother wore her best jewelry, as if armor could protect her from whatever I might say. My father had printed copies of legal documents, prepared for negotiation. "Thank you for coming," my mother said as I sat down. "Thank you for asking properly this time." We ordered wine, a bottle of Sancerre that cost more than my first apartment's monthly rent. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. "We owe you an apology," my father began. "Several apologies, actually. Go on." "We underestimated you," my mother said. "We categorized you in ways that were unfair and limiting. We made assumptions about your life, your career, your capabilities, and we never bothered to look deeper." "Why?" I asked. They exchanged glances, the kind of wordless communication that couples develop after decades of marriage. "Honestly?" my father said. "Because it was easier. Sophia's success was obvious, visible, easy to celebrate. Your success was quieter, more complex. It required us to ask questions and pay attention, and we took the lazy path. Also," my mother added quietly, "I think we were intimidated." "Intimidated by what?" "By your competence, by how little you seem to need us. Sophia has always been more emotionally dependent. She needed our validation, our support, our guidance. You seemed so self-sufficient that we assumed you didn't want or need our involvement." It was a revelation I hadn't expected. In their minds, my independence had been a signal that I didn't value their opinion or approval. "I've always needed your involvement," I told them. "I just learned not to ask for it." The conversation continued for 3 hours. We talked about childhood dynamics, about the different ways they'd treated their daughters, about assumptions and missed opportunities and the cost of emotional neglect. By the end of the evening, we had an agreement. I would forgive the outstanding loans, over $400,000, in exchange for something more valuable: genuine respect and equal treatment going forward. No more dismissive comments about practical skills. No more assumptions about my life or capabilities. No more treating Sophia's needs as automatically more important than mine. In return, I would continue providing quiet financial support when needed, but as an acknowledged family member rather than an invisible benefactor. The changes didn't happen overnight. 32 years of family dynamics don't disappear with a single conversation. But slowly, steadily, things improved. My parents started asking about my work, real questions about investment strategies and market analysis and business development. They began introducing me at social events as "our daughter who runs a successful investment firm," instead of "our daughter who works in finance." When I bought the weekend house in the Hamptons, they visited and marveled at the property without pretending I must have gotten lucky or found a generous roommate. When United Capital Management was featured in Bloomberg Businessweek as one of the rising stars in alternative investments, they framed the article and hung it in their living room next to Sophia's gallery reviews. Small changes, but meaningful ones. Sophia and I developed a real relationship for the first time as adults. She started asking for business advice when galleries offered her representation deals. I started attending her exhibitions not as the dutiful sister, but as someone who genuinely appreciated her artistic vision. Last month, she told me she was proud to be related to me. It was the first time anyone in my family had ever said those words. My phone buzzes with a text from my father. "Saw the Wall Street Journal piece about your new fund launch? Congratulations! Can't wait to hear more about it at Sunday dinner." Sunday dinners are different now, too. I sit at the head of the table with my parents, no longer relegated to the corner. Conversations include my perspective on everything from market trends to vacation planning to family decisions. When cousins visit from out of town, I'm introduced as the successful investment manager, not the quiet one who works with numbers. The respect I demanded has become genuine admiration, But the most important change is internal. I no longer carry the weight of proving myself to people who weren't paying attention. I no longer measure my worth by their recognition or approval. I know who I am. I know what I've accomplished. I know the value I bring to every relationship and every room I enter. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should know you best, let me tell you something. Their opinion of you is not the truth about you. Their inability to see your worth doesn't diminish your value. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to demand the respect you've already earned. I built a multi-million-dollar business while my family assumed I was struggling through entry-level work. I became the financial backbone of their comfortable lifestyle while they dismissed my contributions as practical skills. I learned that success without recognition is still success. That your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to appreciate it. But I also learned that you don't have to accept being invisible forever. Standing up for yourself, really standing up, with evidence and consequences and the willingness to walk away if necessary, can transform not just how others see you, but how you see yourself. My parents learned the cost of taking someone for granted. My sister learned that talent and hard work aren't mutually exclusive. My extended family learned that the quiet ones are sometimes the most powerful. And I learned that knowing your worth isn't arrogant or selfish, it's necessary. Because the people who love you should want to know who you really are. And if they don't, that says more about them than it does about you. Today, United Capital Management manages over $400 million in assets. I own properties in Manhattan, the Hamptons, and Park City. I serve on boards of directors for 3 nonprofit organizations and 2 private companies. More importantly, I have relationships with family members who see me clearly, respect my achievements, and value my contributions. It took 32 years, a dramatic confrontation, and the willingness to risk everything, but I finally have what I always wanted: a seat at the table that matches my actual place in the world. The practical daughter turned out to be the most successful person in the room, and now everyone knows it. They taught me the value of money. I taught them the cost of disrespect. The lesson was worth every penny. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, remember, your worth isn't determined by other people's ability to see it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop hiding your light and start demanding the recognition you've earned. Like this story? Subscribe for more tales of quiet triumphs and the courage it takes to know your own worth.